Good evening, and welcome to WANA Live, the reading series of the Writers Association of Northern Appalachia. I'm your host, Damian Dressick. This is your other host,
Christina Fasonic, and here we are representing Appalachia like always. And how are you this evening, Damian?
I'm well, thank you. I'm excited. We have a new writer tonight.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So, would you like to tell us more about our writer?
I'm going to do that because I think if I didn't tell people about the writer, then they'd just be confused. Yeah. So tonight we have Buentello Benavides, a writer, teacher, and editor and translator. She's a Hedgebrook writer in residence alumna, and among her other awards, her writing has been named a finalist for the Newfound. I don't have my glasses on, as you can probably tell by the Newfound Prose Prize, the finalist for the Florida Review Editors Prize, and she was nominated for a Pushcart. Bring her out here.
Yes, now that we've managed to mess all that up.
Hi. Hello.
Howdy.
We're so glad that you're on the show tonight, and tell us what you're going to read.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me. And tonight I'm actually going to be reading 3 flash fiction pieces from my latest manuscript titled How We Learn to Forget Each Other. Each piece explores one central question. When loss happens, how do we learn to forget?
I love that. I'm excited. That's awesome.
I love that title a lot.
Cool.
So
Thank you.
We are going to disappear and you will have the screen to yourself.
Thank you. So for the first piece I'll be reading from this manuscript, it's titled Crying at the Eras Tour. 2 30-somethings stand in the sidelines at the Eras Tour, staring at the much younger girls twirling in their sequin tops and blinding miniskirts with the chunky glued-on gems. On stage, the blonde sings about the one she loved and lost, swaying her hips to the sound of her own heart breaking in two. She must hate herself, one 30-something tells the other. Imagine having to sing about your lost love like this to thousands of people. In the row before them, 2 teenagers slow their dancing to a stop. Tassels swing from the ends of their sleeves as they poke frantically at each other's faces. Heart-shaped sequins and plastic gems slide down their sweaty foreheads. Yes, you're right, the other 30-something says, staring at the blonde on the jumbotron. That's the face of someone with a broken heart. One teenager peeks over her shoulder at the woman behind her. But she can't be heartbroken, the teenager says, pointing towards the stage. Look at the way she glows. Light fractures across the blonde's beaded bodice as she spins on the tips of her toes, twirling to a song about a woman wanting to marry a man who wanted to marry someone else. I went to work the morning after my divorce, the 30-something says. The world keeps spinning even if you don't. A few tears roll over the heart-shaped gems glued to the teenager's cheeks. Damn, the teenager says as glitter drips down her cheeks. Damn. The next piece I'll be reading is titled Superglue. When your eldest son marries una vieja americana who doesn't like fun, it's only natural that you buy her a giant cookie jar in the shape of a beagle for Christmas. At Walmart, 3 days before Christmas Eve, you roam down the nearly empty clearance aisle right next to the gardening section, where you spot the cookie jar among torn toys and cracked coffee mugs. Half the beagle's right ear rests broken on the white shelf next to an open bottle of nail polish. You run your wrinkled thumb against the jagged edge of the broken ear. A little superglue can make miracles, can work miracles, you think. At the checkout station, the cashier asks, "You sure you want it damaged like this?" "Of course," you say. "It's for my daughter-in-law." "Does she bake a lot of cookies?" "No," you say. "Es una perra." The cashier smiles at you the same way you smile at the woman you hate. Stiff lips and squinted eyes because you try to make it seem a bit more real. Last year for Christmas, you gave the woman a set of cheap wax candles that you won from a Dollar General raffle they had around Easter. No matter how carefully you handled the eggs, chunks of green, gold, and pink glitter peeled off the wax. The cheap product amazed you because you knew that it would force the woman to groan and vacuum the carpet like she did every year on Easter when you visited her. 8 months ago, she banned your granddaughter from playing with the confetti eggs you bought her. The hollowed-out eggshells broke at the slightest touch, and when you cracked an egg over your granddaughter's head, the little fragments of paper tangled deeply in those red curls she inherited from that woman. At the party, she didn't even serve cake or cookies or sodas. That woman gave out celery sticks and apple slices. She served bitter tea in mini teacups. gold and pink like the eggshells your granddaughter no longer gets to touch. When you get home with the beagle, you skip the wrapping paper and stick a bow with dangling strings on its collar. They coil around your wrinkled fingers. Drooping skin frames the beagle's brown eyes, just like your own sagging skin. Dark fur like your own thinning brown hair. You lift the beagle's broken ear off the table and run your fingers against the jagged edge. You wonder if superglue could even begin to fix a break this big. For the third piece, I'll be reading. It is titled Counting Oranges. Alma liked the feel of smooth pebbles rubbing against her bare feet whenever she cartwheeled down dirt paths, but sometimes little jagged pieces of rock punctured Alma's tender skin. She cried every time she had to pull stone shards from her flesh. Pain aside, she liked everything about these orchards. A soft breeze often rocked the trees, carrying the scent of orange blossoms across the land. She wondered if the streets of New York smelled like the trees she and her father slept under every night. "Papa," Alma called out. On humid days, her father, Marcelo, liked resting beneath the low-hanging branches of the biggest tree. He could afford a small break before plucking more oranges. "What's New York like?" Alma asked. "Your cousin tells me it's beautiful," Marcelo said. "Busy, but beautiful." "Can I also go to New York when I'm grown up?" "You can leave these orchards like your cousin did, but people in New York know how to count," Marcelo said. "They count a lot." Alma knew what her father wanted without him even having to ask. She stuck her arms into the burlap sack resting on its side near the tree's trunk and lifted 6 oranges from the sack. "Uno, dos, tres," Alma began counting. She lined them up on the dirt as she did so. Marcelo stopped her by waving his hands. "Again," he said, but this time in English. 1, 2, 3. Alma paused for a few seconds after each word. The T's felt big, odd, chunky, a sack of pebbles rolling around her mouth. 4, 5, 6. Good, Marcelo nodded. Again. Together, father and daughter counted oranges. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Each number scraped the roof of Alma's mouth. They punctured her tongue the way those jagged rocks had caused her feet to bleed. Alma wondered if her cousin in New York liked counting every day with a mouthful of rocks. She wondered if she would learn to like it too. Thank you.
That was awesome.
That was really great. I was thinking as you were reading about this idea of loss and grief and how little losses can feel so big in times when we're already struggling, or they can take us by surprise. I remember walking through a store one time after a good friend of mine died, probably a year later, and they had canning jars on sale. And I started crying because he always loved to can. And it was out of nowhere. I wasn't even thinking about him, but it's like those little moments where like the fabric tears open and we see, and the loss is raw and there. I just loved what you read. It was amazing.
No, as somebody who loves to buy people mean-spirited gifts, you're like it was like gosh, I saw that was just wonderful.
He really does.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad you saw these little pieces because that's what kind of this manuscript explores, those moments in where grief manifests and how we learn to process that trauma or that grief, or even, a little gift that
tell us
your experience.
Yeah, say more.
I'm sorry?
Tell us about your manuscript. Tell us about, what you're working on.
So I have several other manuscripts, but this is the most recent one that revolves around this idea of when loss happens, how do we learn to forget? And it comes, like you mentioned, Christina, from those little moments of being at the grocery store and remembering something that is long gone, but the ghost is still there. So I try to thread that sort of ghost in all of these little pieces, from counting oranges, the idea of losing one's tongue, forgetting one's words, to something more obvious like crying at the Eras tour of divorce and, these 30-year-old women at the Eras tour alongside teenagers and having very different ideas of what love and loss looks like at those stages of their lives.
No, I love the way you constructed that. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so that's just the main idea of that manuscript. I kind of thought a lot about that quote from James Baldwin about you think your pain and heartbreak is unprecedented in the world until you read. And I try to get those little snapshots of grief in each of the flashes.
Well, I think over time, I've thought a lot about grief and how it functions, and grief is never isolated. A moment of grief is never just that moment. I feel like when we are grieving, we're grieving what has happened, but everything we've ever felt, every grief we've ever had. And I feel like in some ways when the grief is so strong that that's how we connect, like all the way back to our ancestors, is through grief, like this river. I've thought about this so much, and it's in the small moments that we reconnect with that grief that's centuries old, or so it seems.
Yes, absolutely. I try to capture kind of some of those brief moments, but also the bigger ideas of in Counting Oranges, forgetting one's language is forgetting oneself, right? And one's identity, and how that kind of is taking away one's past as well.
Yeah, I really personally, I like that story a lot. Just the way you kind of opened it through a small action, opened a giant door, and how like I was in Guatemala with my daughter, and we did Spanish language immersion. And one of the things I had, she was getting these dolls, these small dolls, and I made her count to 20, and she was very young, in Spanish to get the dolls. And it's sort of this, opening up of a world. Whereas in your story, it really was kind of devastating in a very quiet way, because as one world is opening up, another one is being closed. Really cool stuff. Good work.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. So, even without trying, I tend to write extensively about identity and having to navigate like that hybrid space, because I am from the Texas-Mexico border. And so there is this idea of navigating a border space and wondering, what does it mean to be both American and Mexican? And so how you described Counting Oranges is very on the point about this whole new world is opening up for Alma, and yet she has to close the door on something that belongs to her as well. This sort of forgetting of one identity and kind of, wondering about what that's like what does the future hold?
Yeah, and in one way it's exciting, but also frightening, because you don't really know yet what you're really losing until you step through that door. And then you have the ghosts of the things that you've lost, creating that fabric of your new reality. And I think that shapes so much.
And it's like about allegiance too.
Oh yeah.
Like if you think about from even a class point of view, it's like where am I? Who do I cleave? I really love. It's really good stuff.
Thank you, thank you. And Superglue kind of deals with that same theme, humor aside, or the jokes aside of that piece, this idea of being unable to understand the differences between her granddaughter and herself, as a Mexican woman, her American granddaughter, and kind of trying to understand those divides as well.
Yeah, and that's really hard to explain when you're in it, because obviously she has her own ideas about what's good and what's love. What is love? How do you express love? And her daughter and her granddaughter, it's a completely different universe, and confusing, and I think you really told that story well. Yeah, it's awesome. It was really good. I really enjoyed everything. So what's next? What are you doing with your manuscript?
So this one is under consideration by various presses. Recently was semifinalist for a prose contest, so good news there, and I'm just hoping it lands somewhere. But what's next is just working on this manuscript, sending it out, and then working on my other book manuscript that delves into the Texas-Mexico border. All stories revolve around women protagonists and exploring identity and what it means to grow up on the border as a woman of color.
Awesome.
Wow, that's very cool.
It was really, thank you so much for making time. Oh wait, we have comments.
We have
cool.
a comment. Yeah, would you like to read this one?
Observation. I have no idea what it says, so I'm going to do my best.
You want me to do it?
Why don't you read that?
Okay, this is from Jerry, reader and a regular member and watcher of the show. Observation, belonging, distance. You visualize your moments with a strong voice. I also get an underlying sense of resentment at the losses people face And that is very human. It takes real insight to apprehend the milieu and not just the picture. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. That's a lovely comment. And it's really great to read that as well, because one of the things that I teach as a professor of creative writing, but also as a writer, is how do we develop empathy or observation and empathy, and how do you make these humans sound human, right? And so it's something that I'm really happy to hear that you enjoyed that. It's something that just, takes a lot of practice and dedication to keep writing and rewriting until that truth comes out. So thank you.
It can be hard to write a character that is multidimensional, especially if you don't want to. If you really want to depict this character as like the bad person in this story, but that there is more to that person than just that one thing, and your audience does too. So yeah, that is awesome. Well, when this book comes out, promise that you'll come back and visit us again and come on the show. I know our audience would love to hear more from this book.
Well, thank you. I am so honored to be here, and I would love to share that in the future. So thanks for your well wishes as well.
Well, thank you for making time to come on, especially during the summer.
Yes.
Loved your work.
Problem. Thank you.
All right. Well,
next week, everybody, we will be on a brief hiatus because I will be at the Appalachian Writers Workshop in Hindman, Kentucky, and I'm super excited about that. So I might pop in and do a little live report from Hindman, but otherwise,
there's some fun folks there.
There's a lot of good people there this year. Jennifer Haig will be there. She'll be my teacher. And Jonathan Corcoran, who's been on the show. A lot of people actually who've been on our show will be there. So I'm really looking forward to that. And so expect probably a little live stream from me saying, I'm in Hindman, yay. Anyways, we will be back the following week with a new writer. So thank you again for being on, and we'll see everybody in in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
Thank you.